This memorial feast day of Teresa of Kolkata always means a lot to me. And I still have very vividly in my mind the memory of her dying a few days after Princess Diana, and the way in which people linked the two, mother and the princess. The princess had a reputation as a woman divorced, a woman involved in affairs and so on. And yet, mother loved her. And I always think of that as exemplary for all of us, because we have a way of deciding who to love. And very often our decision is not based on any sense of connection out of a grace from God, but simply because we like or don't like, we approve or we don't approve. In Teresa of Kolkata, we have many examples of a love that knew no bounds, a love that invites us to look beyond what we see and hear and feel towards the essence of the human being as a son or daughter of God. Today we honor that. And you may have gotten a little bit tired of hearing the word love, especially in the second reading. It comes up again and again and again and again. But it's important for us as Christians these days to think on that and think on it long and hard. We love one another. As long as we love one another, God remains in us. No one has ever seen God, but as long as we love one another, God remains in us. And his love comes to perfection in us. And that is one of the things that always comes back to me when I come to celebrate this feast, or when sometimes I pick up one of the books about Mother to read. Love come to perfection. How many of us really want to have our capacity to love come to perfection? We're quite happy where we are, We're quite happy loving who we love. It's test enough, But as I was saying to the confirmation class earlier today, they say that they want to be confirmed, and in saying that, they say they want to love. The love that ought to be exemplary for them is the love of their parents. But we all start off wanting to love. We all start off saying we love. But where does it all end? And when we use the word perfect implies that whole question of it coming to the end, seeing our love through to the end. And that is what faithfulness is all about. As a young priest, many of my young friends used to come and tell me about the trouble they were having in their marriages. And some did leave. But it was only later on, when one person who didn't leave came back to me and said, "Clyde, you were giving me some bad advice, I said, "What do you mean?" And she told me the story of her love for her husband, being abused, and then coming through the process to understand her husband more deeply. The marriage did come to an end, but in understanding him more deeply, her love did not give way to bitterness, but it gave way to a deeper love, a deeper love. And when I presided at his funeral some years later, she was there. She was there. She was there supporting her children, yes. But she was also there because her own love had been transformed into what I would call perfect love. She had nothing to gain from it, but she just knew that she had come to truth about him, and she had also come to truth about her own possibilities. I have often pondered the journey that Mother Teresa made. And in her final letter to the missionaries of charity, published when she died, she talks about two things: about trust, loving trust, and cheerfulness. Loving trust and cheerfulness. And she invited them to look to Mary as the example of that: loving trust and cheerfulness. But also to try in their own lives to ask God for the grace and to live that grace of always knowing that true love is about loving trust. Put the two words together. Some people want to say they love, but they don't trust. I've had a parent say to me, I love my child, yes, but I don't trust him. I understand that too. But the trust is not simply the trust in the child, the trust is the trust in God. And there too, Mother is this fantastic example. She trusted in God in the situations that she had to deal with. And over the past month, I have walked that way of loving trust. Because when I first came, and the sister who was superior here in St. George's, we were having breakfast around the table one day, and I asked her, tell me some things about Mother. And she shared a few things. But the then superior Sister Adriana came by a few weeks later. And she came to see me and she said, I hear you were asking about Mother. And she told me this beautiful story. She says, Mother always said that if what you are doing is of God, trust God for the outcomes. Do not try to determine the outcome yourself. Trust God for the outcome. And then Adriana said with a wicked smile, she says, I know you bishops are always looking for money. Trust God for the outcome. And then she said, if what you are doing is truly of God, He will send it. If it is not of Him, you're going to work for it yourself. And when our pilgrims were stranded in Portugal, that came true for me. The pilgrims themselves had all kinds of stories to tell about their praying and so on. But I remember very clearly when I was saying to myself, how am I to find $100 and something thousand just to get them to Portugal? And I remembered Mother. And I said, Lord, this is your work. So I know you're going to come through. And He came through not only once, but twice. And I know Mother had a good laugh at me, because through it all, I put the miraculous medal that Adriana had given me in my pocket next to my wallet. But these are the simple ways in which we learn the truth of some of these aspects of our faith. Loving trust, and then cheerfulness. If you really love, you will know what cheerfulness is, because you see the humor in so many of the situations in which you find yourself. So, brothers and sisters, we hear those two characteristics of Mother. But I think what really holds them together is those words that she put next to the crucifix. I thirst. Jesus' words on the cross. But they're words that call us to thirst as well. Call us to ask ourselves, what do we thirst for? What do we thirst for? We have our ambitions, we have our desires, but the word for thirst and the word for desire is practically the same. What do you thirst for what do you desire most? To be bold enough to ask yourself that question regularly in all the various situations in which you find yourself. Because to thirst in the context of today's gospel is to thirst for those people who need us, that we may see those people, we may hear those people, and we may thirst to be with them and thirst to serve them. And this is one of the things that I think the church in Grenada needs to think about and pray about. We need to learn how to thirst. We need to learn how, as we walk the streets of whether it's Granville, St. George's, Sauteurs, Hillsborough, what are we thirsting for? Are we thirsting for success? Mother writes that off, Don't pray to be successful, pray to be faithful. Thirst for faithfulness. Faithfulness to the people for whom you thirst in God's name. Because so often it's difficult to stay the course. So today, we honor Mother's memory. And I have prayed all through today, and I will continue to do so, that that spirit may find root here in Grenada. The sisters have been here for quite a while. Their own numbers are dwindling, and they may not be here forever. But if, God, only if, the spirit that animates them, the spirit that animated Mother, the spirit that is the spirit of the missionaries of charity, that we who say we are missionaries, disciples, may realize we are not missionaries of a word. We are missionaries of deeds, missionaries of charity. So that wherever we go, the love of God may be manifest in us and through us. May God, who is able to do so much more in us than we could ever imagine or deserve, may that same God who moved Teresa of Kolkata in so many powerful ways, may that God take hold of us and move us to thirst for the truth of God's love and to live it with all whom we meet.